Today I'm going to show you how to knit a bow pillow using circular knitting machines. Before we begin, I want to give a big thank you to everyone who watches my videos. This week my channel hit 20,000 subscribers, and I'm so grateful to everyone who has joined along on my crafty journey. So to celebrate, I wanted to film a fun project to share with you today. If you enjoy this project, you might also like my knitting machine pattern books, which are available on Amazon. You can find Circular Knitting Machine Patterns Volume 1, 2, and 3 linked below in the description. And you can find all of my digital patterns available in my Etsy shop, also linked below. You can keep up with all of my knitting machine projects on Instagram by joining me at Diana Levine Knits. For this project, you'll need a 46 or 48 needle circular knitting machine, such as the Addi Express Kingsize knitting machine, a 22 needle circular knitting machine, such as the Addi Express Professional, weight 4 medium yarn. The yarn I'm working with is Loops and Threads Impeccable yarn in soft rose. You'll also need stuffing, a crochet hook, stitch markers, and a darning needle, and if you'd like to add one, a knitting tag. In terms of sizing, the pillow shown here measures approximately 14 inches by 6.5 inches, and as usual, the sizing will vary from person to person and yarn to yarn, so your pillow might be a little bit bigger or smaller. I'm going to go through the instructions a little quicker than usual today, so if you're new to knitting machines and need a little more detail in terms of how to use the knitting machine and the techniques I'm using here today, you can watch some of the previous videos on my channel where I show every step from casting on to casting off. Let's get to the project. Step 1 is knitting the pieces. This pillow is made using 3 pieces. 2 pieces for the main section of the pillow and 1 piece which cinches it together. To create the 2 main pieces, use a 46 or 48 needle circular knitting machine. Cast on and off with 5 rows of scrap yarn for both pieces. Knit 72 rows in the main color for the first piece, and knit 70 rows in the same color for the second piece. Use a stitch marker or a scrap piece of yarn to mark which is the larger piece, which you'll need to know later. Quick note, if you want your pillow to be narrower or wider, simply knit less or more rows than shown here for the outside of the pillow, and then subtract 2 rows for the inside piece. Next, use a 22 needle circular knitting machine to knit the third piece that cinches the bow together. Like earlier, cast on and off with 5 rows of scrap yarn. Knit 30 rows in the main color for the third piece. Leave long yarn tails when casting on and off of this piece, which will be used later when seaming. For the smaller piece, you can either use the same color as the main pillow, like in the example shown here, or you can use a contrasting color for the smaller piece. Our pieces are now knit up and ready to assemble. All 3 pieces were cast on and off with scrap yarn. Step 2 is seaming and assembling the main section. Using the 2 pieces of knitting made on the 46 or 48 needle machine, use a crochet hook to seam one end closed on each piece. Leave the other side of the piece open for now. Then gently place the smaller piece, the 70 row piece, inside the larger piece. You'll know which is the larger piece because you marked it earlier with a stitch marker. After the inside layer is placed inside the outside layer, fill the center of the pillow with stuffing. Add the stuffing a small amount at a time, making sure there's stuffing filled to all the corners to make sure the pillow looks even. Then use a crochet hook to seam the interior piece closed. Before you finish the seam, see if you need to add in any extra stuffing before finishing the seam. After it's fully seamed, remove the scrap yarn. You'll see the inside piece is now seamed and the outside piece is still open. Next, use a crochet hook to seam the exterior piece closed over the interior piece. Remove the scrap yarn. Weave in all remaining yarn tails into the center layer of the work. The main piece of your pillow is now complete. Step 3 is seaming the third piece. Next, take the piece of knitting you created with the 22 needle circular knitting machine, which is 30 rows in the main color, and it was cast on and off with 5 rows of scrap yarn. Use a crochet hook to seam both ends of this piece closed. Remove the scrap yarn. Leave the yarn tails free for now, don't weave them into the center of the work. Step 4 is assembling the bow pillow. You'll now have 2 pieces, the main section of the pillow and the smaller piece. Wrap the smaller piece around the center of the main pillow. Bring the 2 ends of the smaller piece together temporarily using stitch markers. Thread one of the long yarn tails onto a darning needle. Seam the ends together in your preferred seaming method. You will need to really pull the pieces together tightly while you seam so that the middle of the pillow looks cinched. For the seam shown here, thread through 1 V-shaped stitch on one side of the piece. Pull the yarn through. Then thread through 1 V-shaped stitch on the other piece. Pull the yarn through. Continue back and forth between these 2 steps until the end of the row, pulling the yarn very tightly as you work. Soon you'll see a seam beginning to form between the 2 pieces. Continue until the end of the row. When you reach the end, secure the yarn with a knot on the inside of the bow and weave the yarn tails in. If you want, you can finish the pillow here as is, or you can knit up 2 more pieces in the same size as the third piece, seam them together at the top, and then seam them to the back of the pillow, if you'd like to add bow ties as shown here. Your bow pillow is now complete. If you enjoyed this project and want to see more of my patterns, you can find my knitting machine pattern books available on Amazon, linked below in the description. You can find all of my digital patterns available in my Etsy shop. If you make this project, please share your work with me on Instagram. You can find me at Diana Levine Knits.